Question. What does the river of life have to do with it then? I feel that it finally clicked for me, all these standards religions are creating. I have felt very insecure on the path, and I just realized I feel that way when I'm outside of the river of life. Yes, I have separate selves, but in a way they kind of lose their significance in a way. Yeah, and so the river of life is kind of a big topic. A lot of things could be said about it. You can actually find a lot of material on it on my websites, ascendedmasterlight.com, for example. So, but basically you can say that the river of life is just a way to explain that everything is interconnected, that everything is flowing. So you have, for example, in Buddhism, you have the concept of the interdependent originations, which basically means that everything is one connected whole. And if you take my video about how the world was created, you can say that we are living in a particular world of form here, and in our realm, in our sphere, we are being pulled up by the entire rest of our world that is in an upward spiral. And so basically you can have you have two options as a spiritual person. I've said before that we can either see ourselves as connected beings or as separate beings. And you can also say that you are either flowing with the river of life because you are going upwards. You are allowing the whole to flow, to pull you upwards, or you can resist that flow. And of course resisting takes effort, and so it drains your energy and your attention. So I understand what the person is saying about all these standards that religions are creating. And one of the main standards, at least in the Western world, is of course this idea that we are sinners. And therefore we are flawed from the very beginning. We were even created flawed, as the Catholics say. We were born into sin. And once you overcome that, once you see that that's all an illusion, it of course changes your outlook. But I also understand what a person is saying. I have felt very insecure on the path. And this is, I think, quite normal. I certainly did so myself for years, and I've seen many other spiritual people do it. We grow up in an anti-spiritual society. We find the spiritual path. And for a time, it's such a big contrast between what we were brought up to believe about life and then what we see in the spiritual teaching, that it takes us a while to adjust, and it takes us a while to feel that, whatever you want to call it, you have some sense of how the path works and you feel like you are doing well. But what I think you can do, and this relates to this idea of flowing with the river of life, is you can make a conscious switch. And I'm not trying to say that anybody, and no matter what stage they're on, can make this switch instantly. But I think that most people, especially if you've been on a spiritual path for a while, you can relatively quickly make this shift. And that is, you shift from a deficit approach to a positive approach. You could basically say the religious programming or the standards of religion that the person is talking about, they are projecting a deficit approach. You are a sinner, you need to be saved, only something outside yourself can save you. And that's, in a sense, the antithesis of the spiritual path, because the reality of the spiritual path, as I explained in my video about how the world was created, is that you're not created as a flawed being. You're not created as a sinner. You are created as an extension of the Creator's being. You are created to be a co-creator with God, with the Ascended Masters. And this is who you are, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're given free will. You start with a very localized sense of self, and you experiment. You have to experiment in order to expand your sense of self. And expanding your sense of self is the purpose of everything. And when you realize this, that we have been given free will and that neither God nor the Ascended Masters are condemning us for the choices we make with our free will, you can really realize that everything is just an experiment. And it's not even constructive. In fact, it's deliberately a standard created by the fallen beings to get us to evaluate everything in terms of right and wrong. We make choices. They have certain consequences. When we experience the consequences of the choices, we evaluate, do I want more of that consequence? Or do I want more than this consequence? Do I want something better? If you want something better, you have to realize that the consequence is the result of what you projected out with your mind, with the totality of your mind, including the conscious mind. And therefore, you look at yourself, you realize the only way you can get something different back is to change what you're projecting out, so you're looking at yourself. But what has happened in the world is we have been put into this deficit approach where we think there's something wrong with us. And we even think that if we make certain choices, they could be so bad that we can never recover from it. We can never be redeemed. And that's what the masters are talking about. There's no choice we could make with our free will that we cannot overcome by making a more aware choice. And so that's why I'm saying you can, instead of having this typical religious approach where you could make such a bad choice that you'll be condemned to go to hell forever. You can see through that illusion and you can realize a choice was just a choice. You realize it wasn't the best choice. Well, you changed the psychology that caused you to make that choice so you can make a better choice. That's the river of life. That's the process of the flow of life, the experimentation of life, where you are constantly growing and transcending yourself. And when you do that, you are joining, as I explained in one video about how the world was created. There's innumerable beings, both in our undescended sphere and in the previous spheres, that are in an upward spiral. They are growing, they are transcending themselves. And when you go into this positive approach to life and the spiritual path, you're joining that river of life, and you are going to be pulled up with it. When you go into the deficit approach, you are constantly resisting, and it takes enormous amount of resistance. You can just look at it as, let's say you are in a canoe on a big river. And just imagine you decide you're going to paddle up against the current. Obviously, it takes a lot of effort. But then you decide, oh, enough with this deficit approach. I'm just going to turn around and flow with the stream. Now it doesn't require much effort. All you need to do is steer the boat. Which direction do I want to go in? And I can attest in my own life that I didn't really have a strict religious upbringing. So I wasn't in this lifetime as affected by the whole sinner consciousness. But I think, of course, I had some remnants of it from past lifetimes, because how could you not have been embodied on this planet for a while and being exposed to this, your sinner projection? So it took me a while on the spiritual path, and even when I got into Ascended Master teachings, I also could see that I had remnants of this where I felt like, I even thought the Ascended Masters were these very strict disciplinarians. They had to initiate us, give us all these tests. And in fact, in the Summit Lighthouse that I was in, one of the most common sayings was, "May you pass every test." And so it was like this, everything was a test and you could fail the test. So I had this in the beginning. Most people who were in the Summit Lighthouse had the same thing, that you could fail the tests and then you thought the masters would condemn you for it. And it was not until I actually experienced the unconditional love of the masters that I realized they don't actually. The masters don't condemn us. Yeah, you can say that every time we face a choice, there's a certain test, what will we choose? But at one point I realized that it was like you can say, here's the situation, I'm making a choice. It has a physical consequence. Now you can evaluate the consequence, the physical consequence, and say, was it good or bad? And therefore you can say, if it was a bad consequence, you failed the test. But what I realized was that the real test is, how do you react to situations in your own mind? What do you do with it? It's not the outer outcome, but how do you react to the outcome? So we could say, you're in a situation, you're making a choice. You realize you could have made a better choice. But it doesn't mean that says you failed. Because now the question is, will you learn from it and use it to grow, or will you not? Will you try to ignore it, explain it away, or blame somebody else for it? So if you learn from a situation, you pass the test. If you don't learn, if you're not willing to learn, well, then you failed the test. So that means all of a sudden I started shifting. The outer results was not what mattered anymore. What mattered was, did it help me grow, or did I choose not to grow? And that means any situation, no matter how bad it was, you can turn it into a stepping stone for your growth. And all of a sudden you can even look back at your life when you realize this. You can look back at your life, you can look back at situations, and you might at the time have felt, oh, this was terrible what you did, you shouldn't have done it, you made a big mistake, you embarrassed yourself, you should feel guilty or stupid or whatever. And then you can say, but what could I learn from the situation? Even in retrospect, it's never too late to look at a situation and say, what is the psychological lesson I could learn? Does the situation show me that I have a certain reactionary pattern in my psychology? This is what I call in many of my videos the subconscious selves. And you can begin to look at, what does my reaction show about what I believe about myself, about life, about other people? And then you can examine that and see, is there an illusion there? And if you see that there's an illusion, overcome the illusion, even though you thought it was a mistake back then, 20 years ago, it's actually now a victory because it helped you grow. So you see, that's what I mean. You shift from a deficit approach to a positive approach where everything just becomes a learning experience. And I know very well, because I can even sense this from the collective consciousness as I'm saying this, that many people around you are going to react with, oh, this is nonsense, you shouldn't feel this way, you have to feel bad for what you did. There may be people around you that feel that you did something to them that they didn't like, you hurt them or whatever, and they want you to feel guilty for it for the rest of your life. I mean, I've known people in my life like that. They feel that because they got mad at me, I should feel bad for the rest of my life. But when you shift into this positive approach, you can say, okay, so here's the situation, I did something. First of all, you can say, could I have done better? And then you're willing to learn how you could have done better. But in some situations, you look at, people got angry with you and you're saying, but I was just being myself, or I had a right to do what I did, I just made a choice. And it was their choice to get angry with me. And so therefore you can say, you can look at it two ways. You can say, first of all, is the other person's reaction a product of their psychology? And am I responsible for their psychology? No. So why should I feel bound by them wanting to put me down for the rest of my life? But then, of course, you can also look at the situation and say, what in the situation was a product of my psychology, and how do I learn from that? And what in my reaction to the situation now afterwards, perhaps even many years later, shows me something about my psychology, and how can I transcend that? And then what I'm saying is that you have other people, you have the collective consciousness, you have the fallen beings or the false Jesus who are always projecting at you that you did something so bad you can never overcome it. And this is one of the most insidious lies in this world. Because as the Ascended Masters say over and over again, you have free will. Any choice you made, you can transcend by making a more aware choice. And when you realize that, that's when you can flow with the river of life. And it basically means that any situation becomes a stepping stone for progress instead of becoming a hindrance for your progress. It also means that when you tune into this, you can experience that even though so many people on earth is suffering, is looking at life as a drudgery, as a burden, as something that was forced upon them, the vast majority of the life streams in our universe, they don't look at it that way at all. It's just this one little planet. Most planets are natural planets, or they're in the ascended realm. And these people are just feeling such joy in being part of this incredible creation we're part of. This incredible world of form that our Creator has created. You can just feel such a bubbling joy by just seeing how this all unfolds, and you feel you're part of it, and you have self-awareness. You are aware of this. It's just such a deep sense of joy that you can have when you are flowing with the river of life.